I'm here to talk to you about creating your own report card and the focused education publication that supports schools' self-evaluation. Ofsted released their report card version, their framework and their toolkit in mid-September 2025. What we have done is taken the Ofsted framework and helped schools, hopefully, to decide exactly where they are currently judged against the criteria used by Ofsted. So, as you can see, the Ofsted principles gave us 5 judgments. They have changed the name, the terminology, and as you can see, what used to be outstanding and then exemplary has finally ended up being called exceptional. They're using the blue colouring to emphasize this aspect as well. What used to be strong is now known as strong standard, and what used to be secure, expected standard, and the bit that used to have attention needed is now needs attention. And perhaps the biggest change is in the final one, which was causing concern in the draft version. They've now called urgent improvement. The categories have changed as well. There are 8 categories for primary schools. Leadership and governance remains very much as they did before. However, they've combined curriculum and teaching. In our publication, you'll note that we have actually still kept curriculum and teaching separate to enable you as schools to have a better understanding of what we're actually looking for. Achievement is the 3rd section. Attendance and behaviour has also been put together, as actually in the previous framework for Ofsted. However, they've now been combined, having been separated during the draft version of the report card they actually released earlier this year. Personal development and well-being remains as it is in the draft. Inclusion, which was included in the draft, perhaps for the first time, has remained, as indeed has safeguarding. And obviously, for those of you with an infant part, or children coming in at Key Stage 1 and before Key Stage 1, there is obviously the early years part as well. Okay. Now, what we've actually done is to take each of those 8 areas that I've actually outlined here. We've given them a bit of a symbol to help you create a better sense of feeling for them as well. And hopefully you'll see that you will have 8 of those very much alongside to consider under the 5 judgments they've actually made. Now, I'm actually going to use inclusion as an exemplar to explain to you what we've actually done so that you can see what we've actually done against all the areas that Ofsted have put together. Obviously, I haven't got time to go through them all for you, so I've actually chosen this one, perhaps because it's fairly new still as an independent judgment within the framework from Ofsted. The first thing I did was to actually really check on what Ofsted's requirements were. And they set out quite clearly in their framework in this format, okay, where you can see, for instance, that needing attention to strong standard comes first, then they actually add the urgent improvement and the exceptional. Now, with each of the 8 areas, the exceptional size really also suggests very strongly that schools would actually be in a position to share their practice and support improvement in other schools. That is actually set out within each of the 8 judgments that are here. Now, as you can see, once we've gone through there, what I then did was to bring in the main questions that Ofsted is likely to be asking against each of those areas. And I've actually ended up with 12 different main questions. And from there, what I then did was to actually put a suggestion down as to what urgent improvement, needs attention, expected standard, strong standard, and exceptional would look like within your school. So as a leader of a school, I'm kind of suggesting to you that you could look at these comments, highlight the ones that you feel that best fit your school. I've tried to keep a horizontal picture going across, so we are largely dealing with the same thing. So, for instance, not surprisingly, special educational needs figures large in this section here. At the bottom, you'll notice that if you believe that your major sort of focus is, or your major judgment is likely to be one of the 5, you can click on to one of those and it'll take you immediately to a set of questions. So if this is the urgent improvement one, for instance, it will move you on to a set of questions that we're suggesting you should be asking yourself in the school. That applies against each one. So this is against all the 8 criteria. Don't forget, I'm using the inclusion here as just an example, so that it gives you a better feel for what's included within the document itself. So as you can see here, my range of questions are different according to where you think your school currently stands. And the aim of these questions is to help you to move on to the next judgment stage, or to reiterate exactly where you currently feel you actually belong. I'll just run through to the exceptional, and as you can see, they are actually there to support your needs. Once you've done that against the areas, you can highlight the areas. As I said, they won't all fit neatly under one judgment. You find that perhaps you'll have a predominant number of judgment in one area, with some on either side, dependent on. So, for instance, if I'm saying we're got strong practice, we may still have a few areas within the expected standard, and even 1 or 2 areas, hopefully, falling into the exceptional standard at the same time. Once you've actually made that decision, you can then move that information into your record card. I'm suggesting that this here could be, for instance, a front page for you with all the school's details. Don't forget, the context of your school isn't about your commentary about your school, but it's about the factual information about the number of children you've got with special education needs, how many are on an EHCP plan, how many children are entitled to pupil premium funding, how many children have got English as an additional language, etc., etc. For instance, if you have a new head teacher in a school, that may well be reasonable for you to put it into this context as well. But in the main, the school's context is very much based upon information and data about your children that you have currently. Then I'm suggesting that under each of the heading, you can see here leadership and governance, etc., etc., you may well find that you would be able to populate these areas using some of the comments that I've made in the original statements earlier. However, the main thing is for you to actually then personalize those to your school, so that you eventually end up with a commentary upon the leadership and governance. You'll have a commentary upon curriculum and teaching, perhaps separately, or you may well wish to bring them together, as Ofsted has done. You may well then have an achievement commentary, attendance and behaviour, personal development and well-being, inclusion, safeguarding, although that may well be shorter, because as you probably know, what you have to make the bigger judgment there is whether you've met the standard or whether indeed you fall below that standard. Falling below that standard, of course, does almost immediately mean that there may well be a revisit to your school within a very short period of time. The early years bit is at the end there as well. From there, then, you might be able to determine what your next steps are. I've suggested for this academic year in this particular case, and then that's the whole process completed. So basically what we are trying to do, if I just move right back to the beginning again, to really provide you with enough information to create a self-evaluation record, which would be actually looked at quite regularly by your staff. You could make alteration and changes on a regular basis or on a biannual basis, whichever you feel best fits your needs at this moment in time. But my main aim is to save you time by looking at the key information that Ofsted would be looking at. By moving from the initial commentary to creating those questions in the first place, to creating the document that I've shared with you, that's the way we've gone about putting together this report card. Thank you for listening.